Hello, welcome to the Fifth Star. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And this is a podcast where we're trying to find our next 5-star movie. And when we find that movie, this podcast will burn alive.
So on this episode, we are excited to review Sinners, which has been out for a couple weeks, but has been doing really well in the box office. So this is directed by Ryan Coogler, and this is his first completely original story. And it's about twins who go back to the South in 1930s Mississippi, and they're trying to set up shop in a juke joint. Mm-hmm. And, you know, opening night, will things go well, or will there be something else in store? So we'll talk about the movie, do a full breakdown, but first we like to try to guess what we think each other gave it. Jamie, I think that you gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay. You said you were excited to review it.
Yeah.
That makes me think you gave it a good score.
Okay.
So I'm gonna guess you gave it a 4.0.
Okay. 4.0.
That feels pretty safe for you.
For me. I don't know what that exactly means, but we shall see. So we'll give our initial spoiler-free thoughts.
Yep.
And then we will reveal our scores. So, Jamie, what did you think of Sinners?
I just want to say, this is the first time in this podcast that I've taken notes on a movie.
Okay.
I don't know what that says.
Is that good or bad?
Exactly. Is it good or bad?
You had thoughts.
I had a lot of thoughts.
Okay.
First of all, I watched this movie 2 days ago, and I keep thinking about it. I just keep thinking about like new things or new aspects that hadn't occurred to me before. And I am also excited to talk about this because I feel like we're about to have a very in-depth conversation.
We shall see, but I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
I mean, there is a lot to break down about this movie. I'll say that, you know, we're gonna not spoil the basic premise of this movie for your sake in case you haven't seen it yet.
Yes.
If you have not seen it, what I would say is maybe you can watch the first trailer, but do not watch the second trailer. I think it reveals...
Unless you don't care about, like, minor spoilers.
Yeah, but it reveals way too much. And unfortunately, I didn't watch any of the trailers. I tried to avoid, you know, like if you've been watching this show, you know, like I try to avoid like any kind of spoilers at all. But unfortunately, I already knew a few things, and I did know about the basic premise of the movie. And it kind of hurt it initially for me because the whole movie, I'm just waiting around for this premise to happen.
Dang.
And it just
if you hadn't known, you would have been so shocked.
Yeah, I would have been shocked.
Yeah.
And I would have, I think, been more into the setup. Like the setup was good, but it was really long and really drawn out.
I personally think the setup was so crucial though. Like this movie for me would not have worked at all if the setup hadn't been what it was.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
It is really important for, I think, what the bigger point of what Ryan Coogler is trying to do with this movie.
Yeah.
Which is what makes this movie good.
Right.
But the way it's advertised is advertised as a very just straightforward like genre movie. And I think if you go into it with that expectation, it could lose some people, I think, because of how long it takes for it to get going.
Interesting.
You know,
I agree with you. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but like
you think you would have enjoyed it a lot more?
I don't know, but I also was kind of like waiting for that.
Yeah.
Like the other shoe to drop, and it did take a while to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I still, at the same time, I was pleasantly surprised by like the amount of, I don't know, in-depth setup that we were getting and all the character development. Like I loved all of that. I was also really enjoying all the cinematography. The sound design was incredible, I thought. Like how it was mixed and how like it helped with transitions. The music was fantastic.
The music was really good.
Like
for sure.
All of that I was very much enjoying and also like not expecting. So it's like it's kind of a mixed bag because you expect it to be one thing and then it subverts expectations, which can be a con and a pro at the same time.
Yeah. I think if you take the movie just for what it is and
Yeah.
for what Ryan Coogler was trying to do and the way he constructed the whole thing, I think it's actually really smart and masterfully done. And it's just unfortunate that a trailer can just kind of set you up for something that the movie's not trying to do. Right? Like, we have to remember the trailers are cut by the studio after
Right.
the movie's completed. And but I will agree with you. Like, the long, slow build never loses you. It's never boring.
Right.
Right? Like, the characters do feel interesting and you're drawn into that world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fleshing out and building and setting up this world.
And even the side characters are like very easy to kind of like get a really clear picture of almost immediately. And I thought like all the dialogue was really snappy. Although I'll be honest, I kind of wish I had subtitles because sometimes their accents were so strong that I was like, what did she say? What did he say? For instance, the scene with Annie, she keeps talking about roots, but I kept thinking she was saying like roof. And stuff. And I kept being like, wait, what is she talking about? And I got super confused during that scene. And so, yeah, there's a little part of me that kind of wished I had subtitles.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the mixing in the theater that was like kind of muffling some of it. But yeah.
Now, this movie, you mentioned cinematography. I think it was really beautifully shot.
On film.
Yeah, it was shot on film and it was actually shot on IMAX.
It was so pretty.
But I didn't watch it on IMAX. Did you watch it on IMAX?
No.
Yeah, so I watched it on a normal theater. I don't know if I feel like this is a must watch an IMAX movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I do think it is a must watch in a theater movie.
Yeah.
The theater experience definitely made it more enjoyable.
Purely for the sound for me.
Yeah, and I think like, it is a movie that Ryan Coogler seems to have made with the theater experience in mind. And so I really enjoyed that part of it. I think for me, it might be similar to you. Like, I think this movie got better the more I just sat on it.
Yeah.
Like, right as it's happening or right when it's done, I'm kind of like conflicted. I'm like, I don't know. Do all the pieces kind of work?
I'm
do they
exactly
all fit?
the same as you.
And I do have some things that I think it's not a perfect movie. It does have some things that we can talk about in spoilers where I'm not quite sure how all those pieces fit. It does leave me with a lot of questions, but the more I thought about it and the more I
ruminated,
learned a little bit more about the themes that it's kind of addressing, I really started appreciating the movie even more.
Yeah.
And it's very intentional. I will say, I think this movie at the end of the day, it's not really the genre movie that you think it is. Like, I think that's kind of secondary to really the bigger themes. And there are a couple themes, but one of the big themes is like, for example, like music itself. Like, is music good or bad? You have this duality, you have this, or one of the main protagonists is like twins. So there's a duality there. But even with, our main character, he's wanting to play like the blues, right? But he's the son of a preacher. And the preacher dad, he's like, don't play that music because,
that's the devil's music.
It's the devil's music and it's going to come get you and all that kind of stuff. And, while the dad is like leading like a chorus, like a choir, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of have like these different roles of music that are being portrayed.
Yeah.
And it does raise the question, like, is music good? Is it a force for good? Is it a force for bad? They tell you kind of right up front this concept of like some people like have this gift with their music they play. It can cross dimensions, and
cross the line between death and life.
Yes, and it kind of gives you that setup, and so that's really intriguing.
But like, I think what's key there is that I think it says some people possess the gift of singing music that is so true. Like, it's that raw honesty that like that's the conflicting part, I think, because the preacher doesn't like it because raw honesty is usually, the depravity of the world and like bad things, sin, right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it's also like the truth. So there's like goodness in that, like it's not.
But that duality,
borderline.
Yeah, that's the duality, right?
Right, where it's like the truth hurts kind of thing.
Yes, but the truth does also, being that raw, does open you up to, certain associations that
Yeah.
come with that.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in a generation where it wasn't my parents, but like around me, there was conversation of rock and roll is the devil's music, right?
Right.
And
Or
that's
rap is
exactly,
evil, or
yeah.
something like
And
that.
is it inherently? Well, no, because like it depends on what your lyrics are and how you're using that art form, right? But at the same time, we saw, like in the generations past, like a lot of rock stars did party really hard.
Yeah.
A lot of them were addicted to drugs and alcohol, and were doing some very kind of sinner-ish things, right? And so there was something that they were tapping into that was kind of pure or transcendent, right? And that is kind of what drew all these different people. Yeah.
It's like the honesty is something that was like missing from other music, right? Like where it doesn't feel like as fully down to earth, maybe. And I think that's something that's kind of interesting in particular with this one character, Slim, who's an alcoholic, and he has this like very clear, I guess, understanding of music because I think of his pain. Like his life has always been kind of hard, and I think pain often contributes to like stronger creativity.
Yes. And okay, keep going. There's something I want to say about that.
I mean that's like basically it. Like I think when you're living a life full of privilege, it's harder to tap into that like creativity. But when you're struggling, when you're going through, I mean, just look at our history. Like the people who are suffering often create like the best art, more so than the people who are privileged and prospering.
Yeah. So this movie, the protagonist is a aspiring blues player.
Yeah.
That's really important to this movie.
Right.
Now,
key.
I've started to educate myself and, listen to kind of classic jazz and stuff like that, but I haven't really gone into blues.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of hurt my initial viewing of the movie and experience of the movie, because I don't think I was able to fully appreciate nor understand what Ryan Coogler was really doing.
Gotcha.
But as I started to kind of learn more about that after viewing the movie, it was like a lot more of those pieces started falling into place.
That's awesome.
So blues in particular, like you're saying, fundamental to the form itself is the having experienced real emotion, oftentimes pain. That is the heartbeat and the soul of that music, right? Like the singer and the lyrics and the way it's being sung has to come from that place. Otherwise, there is no blues, right?
Right.
And so it's so much tied to that. But that's also such an important backdrop for what's happening and when this movie takes place.
Right,
which is
the context.
1930s, Deep South, Mississippi Delta, where the blues essentially started. And, or at least the kind of blues that went on to then influence so much of what came afterwards. And really, like, I think this movie is, in one viewing of the movie, just a retelling and a history of the blues. Because the main character, Sammy, is kind of a potential stand-in for Robert Johnson, who I didn't really know much about, but I've heard of the legend, which most people have, of this guy who was young from the Mississippi Delta, wanted to kind of be an aspiring like blues singer. And then the legend has it, we don't know much of his life, but legend has it, at a crossroads, he met the devil and sold his soul, for fame. And
it's like a brother out thou.
Yeah. And like we've heard this legend, but it's because we don't know actually a lot about this guy's life because he died young. But he made just like a few, like these 2 recordings that then ended up influencing not only blues, but just like so much music that came afterwards. And so, like our main character protagonist is kind of like
emulating
that. Yeah. Like I think he is symbolic of this character, or patterned after Robert Johnson. Eric Clapton, who's considered one of the greatest guitarists ever, he called Robert Johnson the most important blues singer that ever lived. The people who were influenced by Robert Johnson's lyrics and stuff like that Bob Dylan, Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, they all have cited Johnson's lyrics and musicianship as key influences of their own work, right? Like, so much of like classic rock as we know it and that we grew up with,
Or folk.
yeah, has been directly impacted by this guy, right? Yeah, this movie just, it has so many thematic things, I think, that are really compelling and interesting, that rise above kind of the superficial, like what you think you're just getting from this movie.
Yeah.
And that's really what kind of won me over, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think like this does have Oscar potential. I really do.
Ooh, that would be really exciting to see this as like a Best Picture.
I don't know.
Not only nominee, but even a winner.
Or just, I don't know. There are like many categories I think that it could have a decent chance at, maybe. I know we're still early on in the year, but
yeah. Before we reveal our scores, I thought it was really interesting that Sinners has now become the highest grossing original movie of the decade. So in terms of just a pure original concept script, overall people are saying they want original content.
Right.
And here it is. People have showed up. They've responded to it, it seems like. So I think this is just exciting for cinema, for the future of movies. And so for that, I also was very appreciative of like the fact that this movie exists.
Right.
So
and that means like completely original IP, right? Like not adapted from a book or a toy.
Yeah. Not a sequel even.
Not
like,
a
come
sequel.
on. Just like how many
not a
of
video
the,
game, yeah.
Yeah, the highest grossing movies are just something 2, you know, or 3.
Right.
Yeah. So let's reveal our scores.
Okay.
You guessed that I would give it a 4.0, and I did give it a 4.0.
And I also gave it a 4.0.
Okay, yeah. Sounded like...
Yes.
I just thought maybe perhaps the gory elements
Which
might not be a fan of.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of. Like, fantasy violence for some reason doesn't bother me as much, but there were a couple, like, just gratuitous things that they did that I was kind of like, this is unnecessary.
Yeah.
And honestly, a little silly
Yeah.
at times.
Now, we are going to get into full-on spoilers.
That's right.
We do have to talk about, like, the main premise, but there are some things that I felt like were uneven, and that's why I didn't give this higher.
Yeah, same.
So, you know, if you haven't seen the movie, watch it, and then come back and join us for our full-on discussion.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay, so I think that the reason that this took me a while to digest is because the theme or themes are really complex. And I kind of left the movie theater thinking like, wait, what was the movie about?
Yeah.
But then like, yeah, as I ruminated, digested, I realized like the themes are there. They're clear. And I think ultimately, this is just my take, but I kind of felt like this is about corruption. Like, good things, any good thing really, can be corrupted into something bad. And I kind of feel like that was the main plea of our villains, which were vampires.
Yeah.
And their whole plea of like trying to convince them to join, they were using very good things. Like, you'll have freedom. You'll find acceptance with us. Like, you'll finally be in a society that won't come after you. And these are all good things, but they're using it in a very corrupting way, right? And since this movie has so many ties to like you know, biblical themes because of like him being a preacher's son and like quoting the Lord's Prayer, I like found this verse and it was like kind of on point.
Okay.
Because it's in 2 Peter 2, verse 19. They promise them freedom while they themselves are slaves of depravity, for people are slaves to whatever has mastered them. And I kind of thought like that was sort of the enticing theme of like, hey, if you join us, you'll have freedom, but they really are just like slaves to Remick, right? The main leader guy.
Yeah, because he's kind of like
he's controlling them all.
Yeah, they're almost like a hive mind, it seems.
And he's the one who's like mastering them all. And so it looks like, oh, look, you'll be free. Like, look at, but no, it's 100% just a new master that they'd be selling their souls to.
I've picked up on similar ideas as you, but I feel like there's different ways you can go with it. Because
I have others.
Yeah, because these vampires are interesting.
They're very complex.
They're not exactly like the vampires we've always seen, right? Now they have the all the genre things of they're allergic to garlic or don't like garlic and holy water and whatever, that kind of stuff. And the stakes to the heart. Now, one of those things that I didn't know about was like the whole like vampires can't come inside without an invitation.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't know that was like a common vampire trope. So when that happened, I thought that was like really interesting. But what makes these vampires interesting is that he's like they get into like a whole like Irish like Celtic like jig and like river dance sequence and
that was so well done.
Yeah, so like they're very like Scottish, Irish ancestry, right? That he's coming from. They're playing folk music, like full on like folk music, but it's also like American folk music ish too, I think.
Well, I thought
because they're in America, and and this is interesting because when you look back at the history of the blues, there's like a question about what were the influences that created the blues, right?
Right.
Now, clearly there's African, folk traditions from, kind of Western Africa. You have like an instrument that ultimately becomes like the banjo here in America. So you have those very clear African traditions, but it was born in a time of slavery. It was born on the cotton fields of workers singing like these spirituals and work songs. That ultimately is what created the blues.
Right.
Right. But you also have these other people who are saying, these slaves were also being exposed to their masters like Scottish and Gaelic like gospel music. And you also had like...
But you have to think too, like the Irish music, like the Irish people were also like, they had some persecution issues with the whole like Catholic versus Protestant and all that stuff.
And you had the you had Scottish and Irish immigrants who were also coming into the South and bringing their culture too at the time. And so they are also credited with having an indirect influence on the blues. And so like one way I was reading this is like inside the barn or inside the juke joint is like predominantly Black people playing the blues, right? Who are coming to the jigs, and this is where the blues is born out of. It's like you work on the cotton farms picking cotton all day, and on the weekend, you scrap up all your money, you save up your money, whatever little you have, and you just want to like go out and have some fun, right?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like their thing in these spaces. And then outside you have these white people who are singing like folk music, Irish kind of folk music, and they're wanting to come in. And so I think there's like this element of potential, like, okay, they're living in the same spaces and they're kind of like being influenced by each other. Like, is what's happening outside kind of the same as what's happening inside? Or outside and inside is kind of the same thing, but just with two different groups of distinct people. And so one reading of the movie is like a us versus them. It's like the white music versus the Black music, right? Or the white people versus the Black people. But there is another reading that is like kind of what the vampire is saying, Remick is saying. He's like, we are all one family. Can't we all just be one?
They're all influencing each other.
Exactly. And there is an element of music that is, you can't really just cleanly separate these things. Like they all kind of blend into each other. They influence each other, right? And so you could argue without the presence of the kind of Scottish, Irish immigrant, whatever, maybe the blues wouldn't have been exactly what it is now.
Maybe
it might have still happened, but it might have just had a totally different kind of sound or, whatever. But then you also have this idea of like, is it cultural appropriation? Is he coming and then trying to suck it for themselves, right? Like steal it from them. And literally he's like trying to come to Sammy and saying, I want his gift. Right?
Yeah.
And so that does sound very like kind of like white man wanting to appropriate.
I did read an article about that.
Oh, okay.
But I personally like didn't totally feel that while
Okay.
I was watching the movie.
Uh-huh.
But when I read the article, I was like, oh, yeah, I could see that. Particularly with, like, Slim, going back to Slim's story arc,
Mhm.
though. Like, I remember thinking, oh, because he is so good at playing music and everything, and then all his friends are in the chain gang.
Mhm.
So I kind of felt like his storyline was kind of alluding to appropriation of like, oh, this guy's really talented. We're
Mhm.
gonna like take all he has so that he has like nothing left, and all of his talent we're gonna like juice out of him. And yeah, so like I felt that more with his story arc, which is strange. I know that's like doesn't sound correct because it
Interesting.
seems more obvious that the vampire would be trying
Yeah.
to suck all of Sammy's.
Yeah.
But I remember like really maybe I was too hyperfixated on the whole corruption theme because I really felt like they were trying to corrupt him. And like their goal was to take his talent for sure. Like the music was a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But also I felt like they were trying to corrupt him, like have him sell his soul to the devil. But like he represents like kind of a purity in this movie because he's so innocent and his cousins are so their background is criminals.
Yeah, but is he so
And
innocent? Because he does.
he kind of gets more corrupt as the movie progresses.
Yeah, which.
But he starts off as a very like I mean he was reciting scripture.
Yeah.
He's like obedient to his father. He's a good kid.
But this does go back to those themes of, is music kind of inherently good or bad? Is it a force for good or bad?
Right.
And they say in the prelogue, like, you know, music can bring healing, but it can also conjure up these demons and stuff like that, or the dead. And I mean, it's not by accident that the legend goes that Lucifer was an angel of like music, right? And so this whole idea of, you know, Remick is like, is he coming with good intentions or not? Like, is he genuinely like attracted and drawn to just raw, beautiful music? Maybe he just wants to. And so actually listening to an interview with the director, he actually said this vampire, he's, you know, basically like a white Appalachian kind of man.
Right.
And he was like an immigrant. He would have been in a foreign land, and it would be natural for him to be drawn to the blues. It would be natural for him because it's familiar, right? It's coming out of something that's a similar essence and quality that he grew up with. And so when he wants to come in, it could be almost like a genuine desire to just belong, to find his own people.
Yeah.
But because it's happening in America, where there's all this, like, the black people who were there playing that music were brought there by people of white color skin, there's like I don't know if I trust this guy. Like,
Right.
what is his intention, right?
Right.
And so there's like that barrier that exists in that time.
And nobody quite belongs.
Yeah. And so
Right.
you can't really belong, and you can't just be one big happy family. And so it's a really interesting thing because you could, in the performance is so good and the
Yeah.
writing is good, that it's not super clear if it's totally evil or totally.
It's
or
truth.
It could be
it's
genuine.
truth. I do feel like he's also just drawn in because of the rawness of the truth of it all.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is music where people are saying exactly how they feel. It's vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that that's enticing for people. We like it when artists are just raw and vulnerable. I mean, my favorite musical artist is very vulnerable. And I think that's like what is appealing or drawing me in because it's something we can really tap into ourselves. And it's not necessarily like truth. The problem with truth is that it's not
always
necessarily
clean or pretty.
Clean or pretty.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because my favorite raw musician is Eminem. You know?
I thought it was Queen.
Well, but I think Eminem is more raw. Like, he's more just puts everything out there, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Right? It comes with a lot of stuff that's just, like, kind of not
relatable,
always easy
but...
to, like, it's not always palatable.
Mm.
Right? It's the stuff that your parents don't want you to listen to.
Yeah.
And maybe for
Yeah.
good reason. But there is something true there.
Right.
Yet, there is a darkness that often gets drawn in. And there are these evil intentions.
Yes.
And so going back to the appropriation, I don't think by accident that apparently like country music becomes very heavily influenced by blues music, because the whole like storytelling, that raw kind of emotional thing that we get in country music is so blues, right? Like
Yeah.
that was born out of all that pain and stuff on the cotton fields. And so that kind of lineage, and you can, whether it's, you know, predominantly white. Now there's obviously a lot of black country, you know, artists now, which is fascinating, right? And that's an interesting development, but also very mostly white classic rock, also deeply heavily influenced, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the movie, you have like the cameo of the old Sammy, who's apparently played by, I didn't know who he was, but Buddy Guy. Do you know Buddy Guy?
I mean, I saw his name in the credits.
Okay. Unfortunately, like I didn't know like kind of his importance, but he is basically like kind of this pioneer of like Chicago blues, where he took the blues, left the South, goes up to the North into the cities and goes to Chicago, and then, you know, electric guitar gets influenced and mixed in, and then he's kind of one of those pioneers, and he apparently has influenced generations of some of the greatest guitarists of all time, including Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, and John Mayer, right? And so like, but so it's weird, like so many classic rock artists and, you know, bands that were so directly influenced by these black blues musicians were very successful white men. And so is that the vampire? Did they come and just suck it out for themselves and just make a whole lot of money? So these themes of, you know, kind of influence and appropriation and the fine line and duality between all that stuff is so complicated but really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is really punctuated by this really important scene right in the middle of the movie that, I don't know, what did you think of the whole like music kind of scene?
You mean when all of the ancestors and the
Yeah.
future people? I thought it was cool.
Okay.
I thought it was really brave, for one, that he chose to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big creative choice that, like, he could have kind of chickened out and been like, it's too weird. Like, people might get thrown off by it.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was so cool because it blended. Like, it blended so well. How he was able to kind of, like, mix in modern, like, 80s rock and then even a little bit of rap and hip-hop kind of, like, into this 1930s blues song.
Yeah.
And then the African drums, and then even a little bit of the Asian, like Chinese traditional music. Like,
Yeah.
he was able to kind of blend it all together, and it really just showed how transformational music is, like, across time, but like still blends. Like, and I thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah. So I agree. I think, well, first of all, you're watching the thing, and then Sammy's playing, and all of a sudden you have like a kind of electric guitar, modern day, or kind of more modern day. And then you're just like, what the heck is this? You know, what's going on? But it is very clear, I think, if you're at all aware of kind of the influences of music and how that's evolved, that's what he's showing you.
Yeah.
And so I really did appreciate kind of the boldness to kind of go for it.
Yeah.
And just own that. And I think like the influences, like Ryan Coogler is really aware of, he's very honest about the influences of even the blues. Like, he's not trying to say like, oh, we created it,
right,
like from scratch, right? Because you see like Native American like drummers playing like is one of those things. And like some theories do state like the 4-beat like measure structure of the blues might have its influences from like a type of traditional Native American drumming. So, and
then the influences from Irish Celtic music,
outside, so I think he's just being very honest about all these kinds of dynamics, and so that's why I do think like the music, like the vampires, is really just like a metaphor for like the music itself.
Maybe I don't. That's it's so interesting because like I knew the music was important, but like for me, I think I was so much more focused on the other stuff that like the music almost fell secondary for me, and it was more of like a way to highlight. So, back to my thesis about the corruption. So I think a lot of this is about how good things can be corrupted, and I have like a lot of reasons as to why. So like the whole setup of the movie, it really is highlighting money. Money is a huge theme for the whole first half because Smoke is kind of obsessed with it, and he's even like teaching that girl like, no, you gotta barter for more.
That's right.
Like you gotta ask for more. And then when the two guys try to rob him, he like shoots them both to teach them like a lesson that like you can't steal from me, right? Because he wants that respect. And then there's the whole like comment about blood money. Annie calls Smoke's money blood money because he stole it, and it's from a criminal background, and you know, he didn't like earn it in a valuable way. And then I think that is even further highlighted when at the very end or towards the end they find out that they bought this juke joint is actually a slaughterhouse. Like it used to be a slaughterhouse. So they bought their own slaughterhouse.
And slaughterhouse meaning a KKK slaughterhouse, not an animal slaughterhouse.
Right. So they bought their own KKK slaughterhouse with their blood money. And it kind of just shows this whole theme of how money can just corrupt. Right? Money is a tool, and in and of itself is not sinful or like bad or evil, but like it can be evil and it can be corrupt. And I think that scene too where Annie is given the fake money is so interesting because she's like not in it for the money. She's in it for like helping people. And then they later talk about charity as well.
Yeah, and so he does respond back to what she says and says, you know, I've been around the world, I've seen a lot of things, and at the end of the day, it's all about power, and the way you get power is you have money.
Yes.
So
and that's the problem is that like that ultimately leads to his demise, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like one corrupt thing. Another thing that I kind of already touched on was like just the whole religion theme and like sin. It's literally called Sinners.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another big theme was family and ancestry, which we kind of already touched on. But like community and love is good and necessary, I think, for human thriving. But you can easily weaponize it and like use it to manipulate people, which the vampires do. The vampires use family as a way to try and convince them to like join their ranks.
Yeah.
But really they're selling something worse than that. Like it's a fake community. It's like an illusion of community where you actually like lose your culture. I kind of felt like there was like a color blindness to his pitch as well.
Yeah. He is offering a new path. He is offering a community that is colorblind, right? Where they will eat anybody, right? They will take anyone's blood. And he is genuinely just seeking family if you take what he's saying at face value.
Which
right?
you can't. That's why it's manipulative.
No, but think about the ending, in the epilogue, right? The cutscene. You have Stack and, you know, his girl, Mary, show up together, and they've been fine. Like, they have found each other. Like, they do have their own community. They're not seen as like, oh, they're like, they have they have nostalgia towards the past, right?
Yeah.
But they seem like they're well off.
So I interpreted that because their master died. Like, because he died, they no longer had the like bloodlust to kill Sammy, or like, you know, they were no longer controlled by him. So I took that to mean that they had been kind of freed in a way from that guy.
Yeah, but they are also still like practicing vampires because
they're practicing. Yeah, vampires.
They are practicing because
it's just such a funny term.
Because they tell Sammy like, we could have eaten you a long time ago.
Right.
The only reason why we didn't was because I was honoring my brother's word. Right. And so,
but I don't think he would have if Remick had like survived. I don't know. So touching back on the family legacy thing, and you can use it to manipulate, but you can also like, it's also in and of itself a good thing. I kept thinking about the piano lesson.
Yes, me too.
Okay.
Yes. This is just a better metaphor, I think, for it. And
well, I think it's a complimentary metaphor.
Okay.
Because the guitar is the piano legacy.
Yeah.
In that, like, he finds out it didn't belong to that famous musician. It belonged to his uncle. And like, now he doesn't want to let it go. He wants to hang on to it because like, that's legacy. That's family. And I think if you like this movie, I do recommend you watch Piano Lesson just because like it plays on similar themes, but it is a very different movie.
Yeah, I think Sinners is better executed and is more entertaining.
It's more entertaining for sure.
But thematically, you're right. I was thinking the same thing.
Because it's about trauma and legacy and how do we respond to our trauma, but also respect like the ancestry that we come from.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of like, I think, part of his final choice at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think like him hanging on to the guitar at the end is kind of a response to that. It's sort of the legacy and the memory of that night for him. And he ends up like choosing the blues path because like ultimately that's where he finds, I guess, his legacy.
Yeah.
Or his truth.
Yeah.
In a way.
Okay. I think I want to add on another theme I think that is prevalent, which is just racism, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like, they show up, they go to buy a house to start, a new life, and it's being sold by who turns out to be the Grandmaster Ku Klux Klan guy, right?
Yeah.
And literally there's like spilled blood that's still not dried of like probably black people that they've killed.
Right.
Right. And then after all the vampire stuff is done, they come back.
Yeah.
Which feels like, from the story perspective, really tacked on. Because
I agree.
Yeah, like they're gone. That wasn't the main point of the thing. And then they just like come back, and then there's like a final showdown. And then it's like, that's the end. And it was like, why? Right?
Yeah.
But I think thematically it could work, because if it is us versus them, even at night, you have the vampires at night. They're outside trying to take out the black people, right? Well, guess what? Even after you conquer all those demons, in the day, the white man still comes for you.
Yep.
Right? It's like, it doesn't matter
you
for the black
escaped.
person if it was during the day or at night, that force and that oppression was always coming after you and always going to kind of like attack you and hold you down, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there is that kind of thing that ties it thematically together still, where again, this vampire thing is a metaphor, is secondary, right, to a bigger point that's being made.
Yeah.
Now, I still think music is the thing that ties all of this together, because even with the race thing, you have like music, which is, the KKK, they're the only ones not seen really playing music, right? And they're the ones that come to destroy this house of music. So in a way, like, they're the ones
the
coming,
slaughterhouse.
Yeah, in the way you can see the KKK guys as a metaphor for the people like who are not down with the pure spirit of music, right? Like they're the ones that want to stop the music in a way and like censor it or something like that. And so you could kind of read it that way in terms of like money and power. Like oftentimes music does lead to those very things. And then the whole conversation that we had about appropriation and all these things, there was a lot of people who got really rich off of, appropriating some of these influences, right? Maybe not all the people who should have gotten all that money and power. And oftentimes that is also correlated potentially with skin color and has been throughout our history. And so there's interesting things there that still tie into, I think, latching onto the primary theme of music and legacy. Man, talk about like, when you talk about African Americans in this country, like you cannot go very far deep into the conversation without talking about their legacy of music and they've had upon music, not only in America, but now all over the world, right? In a way, I almost see this movie as like a love letter to music and the power of music, the good and the bad and everything about it. Mm-hmm. All the complicated things that come with it. Now, this is kind of where I feel like the movie kind of misses something. Is I thought that when I heard that preamble, the music opens up the door to this side.
Yeah.
That it would be more in the kind of demonic, spiritual type of way, where as he played the blues, that it kind of conjured in these evil kind of spirits. Maybe people start getting possessed, that kind of thing, and that kind of monster movie than just like vampires. I thought that vampires was a little bit of a cheat metaphor in a way. Like it works, right? But it seemed like, and then this also goes with another kind of thing that I think the movie missteps a little bit, is that if I was to say who's the protagonist of this movie, I think there are three. There's Smoke, Stack, and Sammy. Like all three of them are almost equally important in the story. The problem with that is that
I think Smoke is more important, but yeah.
yeah, but I think the movie, the way it should be, and what the movie was trying to make it, was that Sammy was the main protagonist, because thematically, he's the one who is the one being referenced, right? The one
He's
with
the one that
gift.
changes too.
Yeah, and he's the one that can, the movie opens with him, ends with him. He's the one that can access that alternate dimension, right? Cross the barrier. And so really, I think the movie should have been more centered around him and about his like thing about his inner desire to want to pursue this dream that his dad is, against. And instead of just that being a bookend thing, it should have been more like consistent throughout the movie of like his dad trying to keep him from doing this thing, but he's like wanting to pursue this. But in coming with that comes good things like love and, connection and community, but also comes bad things like sinful things and also demonic things, and in that there's this kind of conflict that he has of, should I continue to go down this road that I'm drawn to and I have this gift in, but it's also bringing all this other stuff that I don't know if I'm all down for this.
Yeah.
So in some ways my dad's right, but in other ways, like, I can't help myself. And therein comes the devil who offers to sell it, offer up his soul for fame.
Right.
And then we get back into that kind of legend that, Sammy is based off of. And so I think that could have been much more prominent and much more central. But with the vampires, with Smoke and Stack, and they kind of have their own stories and all of this, like, I feel like some of that gets watered down. And then it kind of becomes like almost a hodgepodge of too many different themes, too many different layers, that that's why I feel like in the end, I'm almost like, honestly, at the end of the movie, I was almost like, I don't know, is this a 3.5? But as I thought about it and more of those pieces start connecting, I was like, no. The heart, the core skeleton is there, and it is great. It's really stitched together well, but I think it could have been done better and more cleanly.
Yeah, I think like something my husband mentioned was that it kind of just turned into a slasher film in the third act, and he didn't really like that because they spent a lot of time just doing the violent things instead of unpacking the themes. And I think there's like, there's a part of me that agrees with that. They maybe spent too much time in that, but at the same time, I expected it, I guess. So if they had defeated the vampires like very quickly, then it might have been unsatisfying. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But going kind of into what you were saying earlier, I think it's interesting how the theme of freedom really plays a big part in this whole thing, because I think freedom is something that everybody wants and we all desire it.
Yeah.
But freedom is never like what we think it is. Freedom has a lot of cons too, because freedom opens the door to evil. Like, freedom opens the door to danger.
To have the choice
safeguards.
To sin or not sin, for example.
Right. Like, we have boundaries, we have safeguards, and those are things that like kind of keep us constrained a little bit if you think about it, but like they're self-inflicted, I guess. And so pure freedom in this world is scary. Like, it's not as,
it's anarchy often.
It's anarchy. Yeah. And I think they do a really good job of kind of displaying that in the movie. And it kind of goes back to the verse I was saying. They promise freedom, but they're slaves to depravity. So it's like, even if we are free, we're gonna become slaves to something else.
Yeah.
Like,
so I like that. And if that was the main theme,
I think it carries.
Yeah, but if that was like really all Ryan Coogler had focused on, and not try to also say all these other things about, music and the dynamics of all these things, and then I think the tension between him and his dad would have been like tied into that perfectly, right? Because the dad is trying to control him, and the son is trying to be free. But in that, is he even making his own choice, or is he being controlled by this kind of muse that he's almost a slave to, right? Like, he has to pursue this thing, and then in the ending, it becomes like the offer that that Michael B. Jordan or Stack gives him becomes an offer of that choice. Do you want to live forever and have that legacy where you could just keep playing music forever, but it's not fully on your own terms, right?
Yeah.
Or will you just let yourself die off, right?
Yeah.
But when Sammy chooses to say, no, I'm going to just stay the way I am, he chooses to still retain his personal freedom and agency. And what we know is that he then, because he's being played by Buddy Guy, that his legacy and he lives on immortally through his music.
Yeah.
Right. And so
that's his like legacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think another thing he says in that scene is that night, even though it was horrible, he still like remembers it fondly, like as one of the best times. And I think that's because like he found like some freedom.
Oh, because he says it was like the first time I felt like I was flying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he felt like this pure freedom, but by experiencing that, he opened the door to the evil of the world. Like he opened the door to like, I think it's like pure vulnerability is freeing, but it's also
dangerous,
putting you in a really dangerous spot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like if you always said everything unfiltered that you thought, yeah, you're free, right?
But you're also danger.
Yeah, that's gonna set you up for a lot of disaster.
Yeah.
Right. And people aren't ready for that kind of rawness, right?
And maybe that's something that the preacher was discouraging him from too. Like discouraging vulnerability because it makes you look impure or weaker.
Because if Sammy never showed up that night, everyone would still be alive. Or they would have never turned to vampires.
Maybe.
Because it was his music that drew
everybody in. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
See, I like that there are so many themes. Because I like how complicated it is.
Yeah.
It makes me think.
I agree. You know what?
This
is one of the rare movies that I want to watch again. Because after, after a discussion like this, like even in just watching myself and sitting in my own thoughts and, like learning more about the history of music and all the influences and connections, it was like, oh, I kind of want to rewatch it. But now that talking to you and hearing all your themes that you saw in the movie,
right,
it makes me want to then even watch it again.
Yeah, me too.
And then be like, okay, well, how much of this is really like connecting now? And
I want to watch it again with subtitles.
Yeah, when it comes out on streaming. But yeah, I mean, it might go up even.
I was thinking like this is a high 4 for me.
Yeah.
This is a high 4. Like it was borderline 4.5 for me. But as time has gone on, even I've been like, should it go up? I feel like I've been thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
For it to not be higher. But then at the same time, I'm like, I'll
say regardless of what we give it, you guys should watch it.
Yeah.
Right. This is a movie that is worth supporting with our dollars. Ryan Coogler is a filmmaker that is exciting. So he makes Fruitvale Station, and that's a great movie, and then goes on to Black Panther, and then Creed, and then comes up with his own purely original thing, right? Where he's just saying so many things, and like it just is so exciting to have another director out there who's doing his own thing,
besides
has
Denis
a voice,
Villeneuve.
has style, right? And so this movie reminded me of Get Out.
Yeah.
I think this is Ryan Coogler's Get Out. That Get Out was for Jordan Peele, And I want to see more of what he's going to offer and bring to the table.
Yeah.
So, man, we recommend.
Kudos to Ryan Coogler.
Watch it. Let us know what you think if you have seen it. What are the themes that you saw that connect all of this together? And you can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Letterboxd, or Apple Podcasts. Yeah. And if you enjoy this content, give us a like, share with your friends so, more people can join in the conversation. And join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.